Hello, Southwest Florida homeowners and homebuyers. Welcome to the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast, your go-to source for navigating the vibrant real estate landscape of our beautiful region. I'm your host, Kevin Tremmel, a local real estate agent, leader, and investor here in Southwest Florida. On this podcast, we bring you insights from best in the business, top-notch real estate professionals, seasoned agents, and experts in everything from homeowners insurance to mortgages, maintenance, and repairs. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned homeowner, we've got you covered with tips, strategies, and valuable insights to make your journey in Southwest Florida's real estate market a breeze. Get ready to unlock the doors to successful home ownership. This is the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast, where we demystify the process, share insider knowledge, and ensure you're well equipped to make informed decisions. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast. Joining us today is Kimberly Falker. Kimberly is a seasoned real estate expert with Real Broker. She's also a luxury home specialist and a respected coach based in the Tampa Bay area. Kimberly has over 2 decades of experience and a background in law. She brings a very powerful blend of negotiation skills, market insights, and mentorship to our beloved real estate industry. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you so much.
Well, Kimberly, I always like to start off, basic about you, so everybody can kind of get to know you a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally? What got you into real estate? How long have you been doing it? How's business? What do you like? What do you dislike? Just the whole
good.
nine.
Yeah. I was actually raised right here in Tampa Bay. I went to Florida State. I performed in the Florida State Flying High Circus in college. It was just an extracurricular activity. For 2 years, I was a 4th grade teacher. Then I served on jury duty and I swayed the jury and I thought I was all that. So I went to law school. After law school, I decided I wanted to kind of on my own. So I moved in with a friend up in Boston. And I was a prosecutor up in Boston for a few years. When I was up there, I met my husband. He's originally from Minnesota. He was living in New York City at the time. He promised me that he would never go back to Minnesota. But a year to the day of our marriage, we moved to Minnesota, which was brutally cold. Beautiful, not a bad place to raise children because the cold keeps out some of the riffraff, I guess. But we lived there for 20 years. And so I had 2 little babies, and it was right when after 9/11 and things were kind of turbulent. My husband's in the financial world. And so I was kind of missing working and I wanted to participate in the household income and take away some of his stress. And so earlier when I was pregnant with my first child, I did take the bar exam in Minnesota and I didn't pass by 1 point. And, it's a pretty grueling exam. You study for 6 months. And so when I decided to join the workforce again, I just didn't have it in me to do the bar exam again. My mom was a realtor down in Florida. My younger brother was a realtor down in Florida. So I had been around real estate most of my life. And I thought, okay, let's try that. So it was the kind of the quickest way to enter in. And I thought it would be an adventure, and it was. And so, it was back in 2004. So you didn't have some of the bells and whistles that you do now with online leads and all the things that were obvious. So it really was old school, on the pavement. But I found my niche, and my first year of real estate, I made over 6 figures, and this is back in 2004. And my methodology came solely from open houses. And I had actually had a conversation with a top agent, and I was like, how do I get my first deal? And he said, it's a numbers game. You got to get in front of 100 people, 75 to 100 people to finally, get something going. And I thought, well, if that's the case, instead of doing 1 open house a week, I'll do 4 open house a weekend. So I do back-to-back two open house Saturday, Sunday at 4 different locations because I was really testing the market, seeing where my sweet spot was, who I was comfortable with, how many conversations could I have. And I was actually very, very strategic about the open house process, and it worked out. So my first year turned out to be good. And then that kind of just hit the ground running from there. And so we've moved a couple times and I've changed markets because of that. And I have taken a break because I went on a podcasting journey for a while. So I took a break from real estate. So every time you take a break from real estate, when you pick it back up, you're starting all over again because you've kind of lost that momentum and that sphere, those past clients. So I've done it many different ways. I've done it where I created a whole name for myself with the bus benches and all the stuff. And then when we moved, I kind of just went transactional. Okay, I want to make this amount of money. And the second I made that money, I quit for the year. So I have played around with
Hmm.
this business in many ways, which is what makes it an exciting business because you can kind of
Right.
keep reinventing yourself. And I keep doing that, and so it's
Right.
been a fun process. But yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to, as a follow-up to what you just said, obviously one thing you touched on is just like any industry, real estate has changed since 2004. What do you think works today? So, like you said, many different ways and many different things and strategies. And I think one thing that is very common in general real estate is where people chase too many rabbits, right? So I'm a big fan of finding what works for you, what you're passionate about, whether that be open houses or door knocking or calling expireds or like whatever it may be, and then getting really, really good at that versus just getting 10% good at 10 different things, right? And I would just like to hear from you, like in today's market, and I know you have a coaching program as well, so we'll kind of talk about that in a second, but what do you think works best right now as far as like generating business, whether it be sellers or buyers or whatever?
Well, free marketing is social media. I mean, you don't have to spend money on postcards. You don't have to spend money on ads. Back in the old days, '04, like even to do an open house, you had to put an ad in a paper every single Sunday. That's how people found
Hmm.
open houses back then. And it
Hmm.
doesn't seem like that long ago, but it is apparently. But now, if you're not marketing yourself, and I tell this to the agents that I coach that, people always we start for anything, whether it be a dentist, a hairstylist, or whatever. You look for them online to see what their presence is. To have a website, a really flashy website, is not nearly as important as having a presence. So if they Google your name, where does it show up? And if they want to get to know how you do business or who you are, how can they find that? And if they can't find you, then how do they trust you're actually doing business? And so I'm not perfect on social media, but I do try to work it to my advantage on the different platforms because it's free. It's like put a couple hours into it each week. It's free and do it, learn it so you're not just being the social media of 2000.
Mm.
It's changing so fast with AI. I'm a huge believer in staying ahead of the trends on everything. I just did a huge deep dive AI class today, because it's changing so fast. But to your point, you're right. Find something you're good at and don't spend all your time behind the screen. You got to get off the computer and into your product. And that is previewing houses, become an expert on every house and the price point that you want to work in. And
Hmm.
I still think open houses are a golden nugget because of the internet, people stay on the internet longer. So if they actually, it's again different than 2004. The only way you could see a house back then, if you didn't have an agent, was go to open houses. Well, now it's so great online that if they actually take the time to get off the computer, off their couch, into a car on a weekend to an open house, they're further down that buying funnel. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of like dating, like you form a connection with them. Not everybody's for everybody, but in the open house, you learn the skills of connecting with people and you find that connection. And if you find that connection in person, they've already met you. It's not an online lead where you're cold calling them. You're already way further down the road where then it's not presumptuous if you follow up with them and call, and all of a sudden they are your client. It's the easiest way to get free clients. And within our rules, you don't have to have them sign anything to
Hmm.
first create that connection. And then you
Right.
do the buyer's presentation. But I think it's a missed opportunity and it's free for the most part. So
Right.
I've spent so much money on all the things, the Zillow leads, the realtor leads, I mean, I've gone down that rabbit hole of spending tens of thousands of dollars to problem solve when really and truly getting off my chair and into my car and previewing houses and doing open houses is a game changer.
Hmm.
I'm fortunate
Yeah.
to have most of my business, 97% comes from past clients. So I'm very fortunate with that. But if I'm hurting for another piece of business, I just do a couple open houses. And the best thing to do is open houses of other agents, not your own listings. Do other
Hmm.
agents' listings because you're selling a product. I mean, you're selling yourself, not the product.
Yeah,
And
right.
and then
Yeah, and
I
this,
have a whole slew of strategies that it's a week-long strategy to prepare for the open house, but then you're walking in as the neighborhood expert, as the statistician, as the, you're the expert that, and so you're name dropping days on market, you're name dropping the information, and you've been in every house that's competing with that house. So you can just talk to them off the cuff. You're like, oh, well, what'd you think? Do you like the kitchen? No, we really would like a white kitchen instead of this dark wood. Oh, well, that's interesting because right around the corner, I was just looking at a house the other day. They actually have the white kitchen. It's in the same price point. It's really beautiful. If you'd like, I'm off, I'm done here at 4. I could meet you at the house if you'd want. And so it's
right.
like, but if you talk as an expert, like you don't just put a sign in and say, have the milk and cookies. Like you need to be the statistical real estate expert with knowledge about everything in that database, in that price range that you're working in. And so,
Right. Yeah.
and open houses
Interesting.
are the best way to bump up to a new price point. Like if you don't have listings in the price point that you wish to be in, then preview them so you get to know them like the back of your hand. And when you're at a cocktail party or whatever, you can name drop. Oh my gosh, you should have seen this kitchen I was just in when I was down on the beach the other day. It was amazing. Like everybody
Right.
wants to talk about houses. And then they hear that
Right.
you're in pretty houses. And then social media, you do a quick video and you're posting yourself in houses. So people assume that you are working, even if you don't have any business. If you're in a house every day, people want to see the houses. Just do a quick little reel, stand in front of the house, say, what's $950,000 get you in Clearwater Beach? Let me show you. Da, da, da,
Yeah.
da. And so it's like it's a layered effect, but then you're also becoming expert on the house. Like let's say you're doing an open house on the weekend in the 950 range. If you saw every house in the mile radius of that listing, then A, you become a better expert as to what houses in that price range look and feel like and what's expected of them. But then you can also talk about it out at the open house as an expert of, right now there's 18 houses like in the beach area in this price range. All of them are a little bit, one's, really pretty, whatever. You just talk about the numbers and you say, well, and actually days on market right in this area seems to be an average of 6 to 7 days. So you're talking professionally. You're not asking them, so what brings you in here? So when are you going
Yeah.
to buy? How long are you
Right.
looking? Those are questions that like when you go into a department store that like gets your skin crawling,
Yeah. Right. So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is, number one is kind of get back to the basics, right? Like you said, you've been there, done that with the magic pill being Zillow or whatever it may be, right? But then you've just kind of realized the basics still work even in today's market. So that's kind of what I hear you say. You seem to be big on social media just because of the cost effectiveness, aka it's free, right? And then a big thing you also like is open houses for, said reasons, what you just mentioned. So those are definitely good advices. And all this can be done pretty cost effective, like you said, now, even on open houses. I mean, compared to a 6-month Zillow contract, is,
Oh gosh. Well, I
really
mean,
not that
your
bad.
time obviously isn't free, but
Right,
if you think
right.
about it, I know if you're in the certain level of Zillow, you get them further down the funnel. But it's for a decent zip code, it's 4 to 6 thousand a month.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
still
yeah,
competing, you're still in the round table with other agents. So
yeah.
I've done it, so I know how it feels. And have I had a ton of success? Yeah. I mean, but it wound up being only 20% over. And I don't know. I'd
Yeah.
rather figure it out another way.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. And I have, well, and one other thing you also said, which I've never really thought of, which I thought was good, is that like in today's day and age, if somebody like, like you said, gets off the couch and actually walks into a house, you can pretty much assume that they're a lot more serious than someone that's putting in a Facebook lead request, right? For
Mhm.
example. So that's something that I also like that you said. And back to your point with the whole Zillow stuff. Yeah, I mean, I know an agent that I'm personally pretty close with. And basically, the Zillow, after a while, like to him, obviously you get referral business and that kind of stuff from these past leads, but like he always explains it to me where it's like, yeah, like my revenue has gone up over the last 5 years pretty considerably. But what you don't realize is that in order to get to that revenue, if you base like a big chunk of your business off Zillow, like you're also spending more. So at the end of the day, like your take home pay between like your revenue and your ad spend is pretty much what it was like 6 years ago, because like you're just spending
It's
more,
true.
but to make more, right? So it's just, yeah. So I like your kind of advice to kind of get back to the basics. But one thing I definitely also hear that you've had practice in preaching this, what you've just described. So I want to talk a little bit about like your coaching program, right? So I think it's called Fail Forward Coaching, which
Yeah.
is a unique name. And I know you mentioned to me off camera or beforehand, there's something unique kind of concept wise about your coaching program. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just in the beta stages. I kind of recently launched it, and it came from a conversation that I had with an agent at a conference that we were at. And she was talking about some of the struggles that she was having. And then it was she and her husband. I started talking to her about some ideas, and it had to do around farming, neighborhood farming, open house. And yeah, I just kind of was throwing out different ideas. And her husband's like, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "You just gave her so much better advice. She's been coaching with a coach and paying thousands of dollars a month and walking away with nothing. And you just like totally gave her 10 ideas that will change the course of her business." And so that's one thing that I do think I do really well is I'm very good at creative thinking and ideas based on somebody's issues. I know how to streamline what they're struggling with, and I can come up with really tactical tasks. But then the concept was kind of formed the idea to do this kind of came from this conversation, but then the concept I was thinking about it is what has been missing in the coaching world. For me, I've paid tens of thousands of dollars for all the top coaching programs for real estate specific in the country. Anybody that kind of knows the big names, I've been a part of it over my years. And nothing's wrong with it because it's people that, kind of give you some tasks and, but what was missing for me was accountability. So,
Mhm.
as realtors, sometimes we're a little ADD and chasing things around. And so I'd tell the coach, I want to do ABC, 1, 2, 3. And then the call would happen and they'd say, "Well, how'd it go?" I'm like, well, what are you going to do differently next week? "I'm going to do better." And so nothing, so week by week. And I just felt there wasn't like the hardcore consequences. And so I was craving consequences of some sort. And so then I thought, well, you can't like punish somebody per se, but I thought, what if I made the monthly? So what I have is it's an upfront cost, which is not too heavy. And then we go over, we figure out what are their specific goals for the week. And we tune it into where they're trying to get, and it's very specific to them for their business. And then within the 5 to 6 goals, I provide 3 to 5 tasks. And they have to come next week, and there's proof of completion within each task that they have to provide to me. And the following week at the call, if each task hasn't been completed 100%, then they owe me a penalty fee. So my
Yeah.
money comes from my assumption that agents don't always do what they say they're going to do. But what I
Right.
found is the agents I worked with, I haven't made a whole ton of money yet because they're like, "Gosh darn it, I'm going to do it," and they're like, "I didn't want to do it." And one of them's like, "It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did everything I wanted to. And it's like the best week I've ever had in real estate. So it
Yeah.
works. I'm just not getting rich quite yet off of it, but I will."
Right. Right.
Just joking.
Yeah.
But it warms my heart to help people. And actually, it incentivizes me to do better too. Because I'm like, okay, if she can do that, I can do that too. So it's very
Iron.
specific things like posting
Yeah.
daily and stories and reels, just something that they want to accomplish to move the needle for themselves in their
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. So it's very accountability heavy, it sounds
It's
like, which
100%
is,
accountability.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if a person was like 99%, successful in their tasks, it's going to be almost free for them in the end.
No,
So I
I
might have to
gotcha.
tweak it as it gets busier, but right now it's in the
Yeah.
beta phase. So I'm accepting new agents into it, but I'm trying to keep it streamlined until I go to the next level. But so if anybody wants
Right.
to do it now, they're going to get the best price. But yeah, it's
Best
a
deal.
fun concept. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like we spoke about before we started, you and I, there's obviously a difference between knowing what to do. And because that's kind of what I'm hearing you say, like all these coaching programs, have great content, or most of them at least do, and great advice, but then like I feel like where it misses is like the accountability, right? Like
Hmm.
where it's like them actually doing it. So I like that a lot. And then
Well, it's
like
kind of like paying for a personal trainer at the gym, and you get this great workout and this great plan. And then the next week you go and they're like, how'd the week go? Well, I haven't been since our like our last workout.
our
Well, you're
yeah,
you're
yeah,
not going
yeah.
to get ahead. And so I even think like in the gym, like if my personal trainer like made me, you know, do 20 push-ups for everything I didn't do, I think that'd be kind of a good
Yeah.
concept, like a reverse consequence thing, whereas the consequences are also benefiting them in some way, you know?
Yeah, no, that's great. And so more specifically, let's say like a client or an agent comes to you, and let's say they're pretty new, maybe newly licensed, and the big thing everybody always wants to make is obviously six figures. Is the kind of, I'm sure you hear it all the time, right? I just want to make 100. Um, what kind of steps, like how can you ensure that an agent would get to a six-figure income? What would you tell these agents to do in order to get to a
I,
six-figure income?
I would say exactly what the mentor that told me back in '04. You've
Mhm.
got the more conversations you have with a person, the closer you're going to move the needle. And the more
Mhm.
conversations you have with people in person, it's better than the calling. You know, it's where you are in the funnel. And the top of the funnel is if, run ads and Facebook or whatever, and you get the call, they're typically, you know, window looking or window
Mhm.
shopping. Um,
Yeah,
if you want to pay for the lead sources, it's a little further down the funnel, but it's still on the phone, and there's no guarantee the relationship's going to be there. I still
right.
think open houses are the best thing. And to prepare for the open house, you preview houses. So if it's what are you selling? You're selling yourself, but you're also selling a product that you need to have knowledge for. So how
Mhm.
do you know if you're just on the screen all day long looking at houses? Or I was mentoring an agent just kind of briefly at one point, and I was telling her, get off, get off your chair and get into the product, get to know your product. If you don't see and
Right.
touch the product, how do you know what each price point feels like and looks like in each different pocket? I mean, you could, for your first 6 months as a brand new agent, literally go preview 4 houses a day in all different price points and all different neighborhoods or all different areas and just become a mini expert so that you can talk the talk when you meet the people. But add into that open houses, then you're going to get in front of the consumer or the buyer. But this
Mhm.
agent that I was mentoring, she's like, well, I don't have time for it because I'm cold calling all day. Well, where's that getting you? She goes, I just don't know how to
Yeah.
make more money. Well, cold calling is very top of the funnel. I haven't had much success in cold calling. I have
Right.
paid for the expired stuff. I know I'm very confident in talking to people, but I do better face to face. So how can I get in front of more people? I've had great success in offering open houses to for sale by owners. That's how I've translated or whatever, got those as clients. I can't think of my word. Converted, thank
Right.
you. Converted them into
Mhm.
clients. But just going and talking to them, saying, look, I'm looking for an open house this weekend. I like to work in this area. No harm, no foul for you. I'm not trying to solicit your business, but I'd love to host one for you. It would help because you'll get better exposure. And if I
Mhm.
get the buyer, then I'd love to work with you on that. Well, ultimately, they get tired of showing their house. And so my business partner, I've had huge success in doing that. I like
Mhm.
that better than expireds, but expireds, a lot of people do really, really well with those, but you typically have to pay for the lists. But I think the faster you can get in front of 100 people that
Right.
you actually have a conversation with face to face. And to
Right.
me, door knocking is another good one too. But I don't typically door knock, I door drop stuff
Mhm.
because I find people ever since COVID are a little more wary about opening doors. I don't know why. So
Gotcha. Right.
I just don't do it. I'm not saying that's not the case. And I know many, many, many agents that have great success for it. But my quickest lean into advice for agents is learn the product as fast as you can. So get in houses every single day
Mhm.
and then do open houses every single weekend, as many as you can. And
Okay.
you'll get your first piece of business and then it starts going because oftentimes a buyer has something to sell. And then,
Right.
it just keeps going from there.
Right. and every dud knows a stud, so they might know another person that wants to buy. But
I
no, one
mean, there's
thing,
10,000 different ways that people can do
right?
it, but this is what I like to,
Yeah,
because to
I
me,
got
it's the easiest, the cheapest, and the least cringy. A lot of new agents that I speak to, oh, that feels cringy. That feels cringy. So, but sales is
mhm.
cringy. So you got to get into
Yeah,
the cringe, you know?
yeah, cringy. What a millennial Gen Z word, huh? I can tell you're up in Tampa with all the young agents. But no, I like it. I mean, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, and you as well. It's like, find your niche, like whatever works for you and doesn't feel cringy, I guess, to use your words. But one thing you're kind of opening my eyes to, honestly, a little bit is the open houses because, I'm 31. I don't do a lot of open houses, like, I mean, close to none, because usually it's a way. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of them, and I truly mean this. You're really opening my horizon when you think about the lead funnel, right? Because I've always been of the belief it's a numbers game, right? Because most of my leads, it is top of funnel stuff. So it's like I got to call 100 people to get one appointment kind of thing. And it works. Like you said, it works. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it. But it is a lot of grinding, right? Versus if I could just slide my lead gen down to the bottom of the funnel more, like in an open house, that would obviously be good. But I'll go back to my thoughts on open houses. Like I said, I'm a millennial, I'm 31. So naturally, like me, like on a weekend,
Yeah.
like going somewhere to meet 3, 4, or 5 people in person. And I know it's not a waste of time because it works for people, right? So it clearly works. But for me, it's like, well, I could run a Facebook ad like from in my PJs and optimize a Facebook ad, right? And then obviously it's often just the time, like the way I always viewed it, open houses. And I use this in my listing presentation. I tell people straight up, like, I don't do open houses because the data shows from like somebody walking into an open house and buying that house is very little, right? It's kind of
See,
more
that's
of
where
a
you're wrong because
really
in the last few
okay.
years, like I had a listing down Anna Maria Island. It was listed at 2 million. A woman was driving to the grocery store, a neighbor, saw the open house, wasn't thinking about buying. The house went into multiple offers, but she wound up paying 300,000 over asking in cash because she happened to be driving by. I
Crazy.
just closed a
Wow.
house the other day from another luxury listing right here near where I live, and multiple offers from the open house. So
Wow.
I always do open houses for my listings,
Wow.
especially when they're in the luxury price point because people don't do them. And
Hmm.
and I have a whole open house strategy that I utilize, but I think if it's not your listing, if you're going to do somebody else's open house, that's where you actually can win the open house game because you can be super strategic about the location and you know that it's going to be a highly visited, a very popular area. And so
Right.
you can pick and choose and cherry pick your price and location and know that you're not going to be sitting there in ghost town.
Yeah.
With your own listings, you don't have that kind of control. But I disagree on the open house thing. I
Hmm.
really do.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
I
it's
know you're saying I do think it depends perhaps on the listing. Like condos and
yeah.
townhomes don't seem to sell off of open houses, but single family homes, especially, in nicer price points, there's
Yeah.
something that I'd say in the last 3 years, at least 10 houses have come from open house traffic that sold.
Well, yeah, maybe it's a luxury market kind of
And then
niche
you
there
can
because
also sometimes get both parties because if they come in on
yeah,
attached, then that's a win-win for everybody.
of course, of course. Yeah, because when I said the data shows, like I use the NAR, they bring out like a buyer and sellers report every year where it's like, where do buyers come from, right? And it's obviously 70% internet and then 20% real estate agent and then 5% referrals from neighbors and then the rest of it's like so open houses is like 4%. But yeah,
Be true, but
yeah.
I think it's
Well, and also it's how
also
you
in
do it,
how
right?
I think it's how
It's
a
how you
person
do
does
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of those
100%.
things where it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? It's not
Yeah, I
whether you're
can
doing
send
it.
you.
It's
I've
like,
got a
yeah,
built out PDF open house strategy that I is what I
yeah,
provide to age.
that'd
I'll
be
send it
cool.
to you. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's
no, you're really opening. I'm hoping being genuine and sincere. You're really opening my eyes to the potential of an open house.
just
And like I
easier
said,
conversations,
yeah,
and
yeah.
If they like you, they like you. And I always, when I leave open houses, that when I get, if you're going to do an open house and you're not going to get your contact information, it has been a waste of time. So you have to kind of learn how to do that very casually and correctly. But if they don't give it, they don't give you, it's not the right fit. But, anybody I get their information, I always send them a video standing in front of the house saying, hey, Sue, so great meeting you today. Just want to let you know, I'll follow up tomorrow. I've got some really great thoughts on houses that could be a great fit. That's where but again, you're further down the funnel. They already like you and trust you. And then you presumptively take on the role of their agent, and then it just goes from there.
Right. Yeah, no, great. Yeah, I'll have to do more open houses.
Well, it's kind of like
takeaway from this call.
This is the analogy. It's like a dating app where you just swipe and choose, or actually going out in person and talking to them in person. The chemistry is only there if you meet them. You see this pretty person all day long. They can see the pretty house all day long, but you got to convince them to meet you for coffee or meet you for a drink. But once you see them, then it's further down the funnel in dating. Real estate is like dating, because like you and I could stand in a room and someone would choose to work with you and someone would choose to work with me for two different reasons. Same thing, like you and your friend could go out and somebody would be attracted to you and not your friend, and vice versa. You can't explain the chemistry thing sometimes, but a lot of it comes from confidence and information. If you're the professional, person of knowledge with all the information that just rolls off your tongue of if you know the stats, and they're going to trust working with you way better than if you walk in there and say, oh, let me check, I'm not sure about the house around the corner. If you're like, the house around the corner is 2,800 square feet, it's beautiful, however the backyard's really small, you got to know your product, everything around.
No, it's great. And I thank you for breaking it down with the app, so even my millennial brain will understand it. So I see what you did there. You really are around the young agents up there in Tampa. Maybe I need to move to Tampa from Southwest Florida.
Oh, you can just join my coaching program, right?
Or
kick your butt.
Yeah, exactly. But no,
I know what exact task I would have you do then.
Hoping you will make a lot of money on me with the open houses, that's for sure. But no, Kimberly, I want to thank you for your time and your expertise and your insights. I learned quite a lot, and I'm going to put it on my goals to do more open houses, and maybe we can have another podcast or touch base at least in a couple months, and I can report back to you on the success of that. But I want to thank you for your time and your insight and your free knowledge and your free expertise. And we're obviously going to link all of your social media and your contact information down in the description below. But if someone wants to either list or buy or invest into a home in the Tampa Bay area, or if they want to learn more about your coaching program, where would be a good place for them to start and get in touch with you?
Well, my email is just my name, Kimberly Falker @gmail. And then my phone number is still my Minnesota area code, but everybody here in Florida seems to have different area codes. It's 612-743-8669.
Awesome.
And
perfect.
I'm an open book, and I don't mind calls or texts or whatever. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Kimberly, and you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussions and gained valuable knowledge to enhance your home ownership journey here in Southwest Florida. A big thank you to our incredible guests, and of course to you, our listeners, for joining us. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out. You can find us on Instagram at Kevin Tremmel _real estate, on Facebook at Kevin Tremmel Real Estate, or visit our website, kevintremmel.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback is crucial, and we're always eager to hear from you. Until next time, this is Kevin Tremmel, your host, signing off. See you on the next episode.